when I was about maybe 4 years old, I was taken by my grandmother to see the big men on horses that rode over Las Americas, a grand avenue at the heart of Guatemala City, for those who might not know. Overwhelmed with a curiosity that only knows the shining white teeth of a child's smile, I nagged her to give up the names of those tall men waving down at me as I went to preschool each morning. And I memorized each and every single one of them. My parents can attest to it. They were José Cecilio del Valle, Benito Juárez, Rubén Darío, and Simón Bolívar. But the question that still nagged in my head, even after I memorized those names for maybe 2 years on end, was, why were they there? The time I went to ask my grandmother, the answer that I got was actually surprisingly simple. I'm not quite sure, mijo. You'll learn about them in school someday. Well, the reason why I'm here is because I never did. As a matter of fact, the only time that I ever really had a formal, or had the option for a formal history class at my school was by the second to last year of high school. At that point, it was an option between that and courses that we had to take for college. So the decision was kind of made for us before we ever had a say. I learned more about Simón Bolívar in my AP US history class, and he's at the front of that avenue that I was talking to you about. Now, the official answer to this, and to these questions, is basically, well, you should just look it up. The National Social Studies curriculum, it emphasizes individual investigation in history, anthropology, and sociology, which, beyond being absolutely thrilling topics for the average child or teenager, are just, well, I don't know, that answer kind of bothers me. Might get away with it in a school such as this one that has the adequate funds and resources, but can't help but wonder what a poor student in one of the nation's many public schools is going to do when they don't even have a pencil to write notes in, a book to research in to begin with, or a computer to find both. I think that's a great shame. History, civics, social studies more broadly, it should be answering some of the essential questions that we have as a society. Why are we all here? What is the purpose of our government? Why did we seek independence in the first place? Why should we stay united? In a country with more than 24 different ethnic groups and around 23 different distinct linguistic groups as well, those are crucial questions that need to be answered. They're not. And I think that part of the reason why we're in the state that we're in, that Guatemala is like it is because we do not answer those questions at school, or ever. Because those questions and their answers are the ones that form our national identity. And without a strong one, we're only bound to not trust each other. And that only leads to stagnation or worse. That is why I come to make the case for a stronger national identity. That's what I'll speak to you about today. But first, to explain or elaborate upon this, I must describe one key term in there that we might all take for granted, but it's absolutely crucial. That's social trust. Now, to give you some examples, you drop your kids off every single day at school, at least the parents here, and let essentially what are practically strangers, take care of them and educate them for 8 hours of the day for 12 years of their lives. And you do it willingly. You trust the words of experts, even if you can't really verify those claims that they make. We need that trust for society to function, to begin with. It's essential. You trust your parents. You trust your friends. Sometimes you might even trust your politicians. Not always, of course, but that's another story. Now, the interesting thing about trust is that you can actually classify it, and there are various types. First is, I'm going to talk about two today, thick and thin. They're described by Dr. Dominika Tusek, a sociologist in Kosminski University in Poland. She describes these two types, thick and thin. The first, thick, it exists mostly within the bounds of your close interpersonal relationships, your families, your close social groups, your church group, your graduating class. The latter, thin, exists more for external relationships, those that you hold for your society at large, for strangers, for government institutions. Now, the problem is that societies that over-rely on thick relations are very poor at enabling larger-scale social and political interaction. Because if you can't trust other participants, if you can't trust the other people that are helping you out in this big project, you can't get anything going. Why would you trust a politician with your tax money if you know that he's just going to run off and steal it? Why trust someone of a different skin color, speaking a different language, different religion? Now, I would love to tell you and present here today data that shows that there are low trust levels in Guatemala, and that national identification is poor here, and that we do not stand united as a nation. Now, whether it be due to my own lack of personal research skills, or just the fact that there are none of these studies to begin with, I found close to nothing. But that is not the end. We can find other similar examples in countries halfway across the world. And we can see and analyze if they stand true in our own context. Now, this is going to be a big jump, I know. But I'm going to need you to trust me. You're all laughing on cue, like really great, so I appreciate it. Anyway. Nigeria is ranked 4 spots below Guatemala in the Corruption Perceptions Index, the leading statistical tool for the measurement of corruption worldwide. Now, if for the curious of you amongst here who want to know where we are, we're about like the 24th most corrupt nation on earth. Now, these metrics are very unfortunate for the good people of Nigeria, but very convenient for the sake of my points. That being that, well, we can find similarities halfway across the world as well. And we are very similar. The CIA World Factbook classifies both of our nations as having the greatest, or largest at least, population growth rates in our respective regions. We are both essentially a product of European colonialism. We both try to form, under a single border and flag, a nation of multiple ethnicities that have distinct historical and cultural backgrounds. Now, in the case of Nigeria, this has been going quite poorly. A 2016 study conducted by researchers at Ohio State University analyzed a group of citizens from across Africa and found at least, and asked them, that if they had to choose whether they identify with their ethnic identity or their national identity. A similar example would be, would you identify as Cachiquel or Guatemalan? Now, across Africa, the average was 41% of respondents preferred their national identities. If we focus on Nigeria alone, that metric drops down to 17%, the lowest amongst all surveyed peoples. If we apply those numbers to the population of Nigeria in 2016, then 83% of the 185 million Nigerians preferred their ethnic identity over their national one. I don't come here to tell you that that is necessarily a bad thing. Affiliation towards your own ethnicity should not be something that we shame or that we discourage. We all want the group to belong to. It's only natural. It's when that affiliation competes with that one that is assigned towards the nation that problems arise, and division is inherently encouraged. In Africa's informal economy, the 2013 study by, I think it was the Council for the Social Research and Development in Africa, found that most businesses that are family-run in nature would not do business, or were less likely to do business with people of other ethnicities, of other tribes, of other clans, because they didn't trust them. And it's on across Africa. But you can't really expect anything else of a nation that was forged of colonialism. There was no geopolitical entity or nation known as Nigeria before the British came, nor was there Guatemala before the Spanish. In these projects, in Nigeria at least, more than 250 different ethnic groups are formed into a single geographical entity in which there are limited resources and a massive population. There, every competitive edge counts. So we see things like dominant ethnic groups controlling the allocation of educational resources to benefit the groups that already have an educational advantage. And the results of these things, the result of procedures like this, have been only bleak. Nigeria had a years-long civil war in the 70s. They suffered from military dictatorships on and off until the late 90s. And right now, at the moment, Islamic extremism rages on in the north of the country, where the majority of the population holds a distinct ethnic, cultural, historic, and even religious background to that of the south. Now, I know that I told you before that I couldn't find specific data for Guatemala, but I'm sure that some of those examples already struck a chord with you, whether it be the Civil War, or the military dictatorships, or even the congressman example from earlier on. And that's because the differences are uncanny. Many people here put a lot of emphasis on what last name they have, on where their grandparents originated from, on what skin color they have on their flesh, that's a strong word, but still, and just their background overall. That is very unfortunate, because in the end, I suspect that we only really see each other as Guatemalan due to a sense of vague belonging, not out of choice. It's hard to acknowledge, but a Guatemalan farmer, a Mayan farmer in the highlands of the country will have very little in common with an urban Ladino or rich white Criollo. Sometimes we don't even speak the same language. And the fact that I use those words evokes a caste system, el sistema de castas, that is actually taught in our school systems, that still feels very alive and well today. You only have to look at the faces of the poorest and their skin color to see it. We may all claim to be Guatemalan, but in the end, it might not be so. And it's uncomfortable to talk about because, well, it acknowledges that we don't really see each other as us. We see each other as other types of another. But it could be different. It's not impossible. I'm very tired of expecting the worst of the land that has my heart. In the study that I mentioned before of the African nations, it was found that in countries that didn't have one single dominant ethnic group or a multitude of them, and where there was also a large swath of diversity, ethnic diversity, and large numerous ethnic groups, citizens actually started to prefer their national identity more. That could be the same case for us. Additionally, if we try to bind each other into shared realms of experience through, well, for example, schools, through cultural practices and traditions, the same ones when we run the torch outside of the school each 15th of September that's coming up, we could build a trust that is found to have been increasing when participants enjoy these types of interactions. We could do this. It's not impossible. Now, I'm only 17 years old. I have no college degree. I have not yet graduated high school, and quite frankly, I can't speak with any absolute authority on anything that I have said to you today. What I can stand here, undaunted by this naivete, by my youth, by the complexity of this issue, and assert that we shouldn't look at this, we shouldn't think of unity as an abstract concept that we whisper in hopeful sighs to each other. I believe in a strong national identity, in a need for it, one forged by our demand for accountability of our leaders and for a fraternity, a union between all of us citizens, no matter how different we are. Beyond all of our grievances, beyond the wills of our interests alone, it's important that we stand here as one. The fires of nationalism that are somewhat, you could describe what I'm trying to propose here, has raged throughout history and has caused great destruction. I'm not oblivious to this. That's why I'm advocating no policy beyond restoring history to our educational curriculums and improving our education system overall. But in a nation that has so seldom felt the true flames of fraternity, of unity, and of a grander project that we can all aspire to, I think that calling for that unison of our people is hardly unreasonable, and I hope I live to see it. Thank you.